All right, we're live. Hi, everyone. Tim Radersdorf here. I'm coordinator of the MHI program and Chief Innovation Officer at the Ohio State College of Nursing, and very excited today to be continuing our podcast series with our new director of the MHI program, Dr. Michael Ackerman. Dr. Ackerman, thanks so much for being here with us today. We're very excited to have you join the team here and bring your breadth of expertise to us. And you've had a lot of innovation throughout your career. So can you kind of go back to not necessarily the beginning, but talk about what innovation means to you and how that's been a driving force and a catalyst throughout your career?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's very exciting to be at Ohio State and part of a really cutting-edge, brand new program. Innovation. Well, let's talk about what it's not. It's not just something new. It's not necessarily just because it's entrepreneurial, it's innovative. But I think to be innovative, there's a certain element of disruption. I think innovation creates opportunities for people that maybe didn't have it before with the current system. Innovation is it's a cliche, but it's thinking outside the box. And I like to borrow what Google refers to as it's not making something 10% better, it's making something 10 times better. So to me, that's what innovation is. It's not taking a risk, not being afraid to necessarily fail, learning from mistakes, but in the end, you're making something more accessible, greater value, maybe value being maybe you get the same product for less money or a better product for a similar amount of money. So I think it really depends on what space you're in, but I think innovation by nature is disruptive because it challenges and it challenges the norm and it forces people into more of a change mode. And it's also, we're moving from the industrial age model, the industrial age to the information age. So people now have more access to information, and that demands innovation. That demands better access, change in process, improving process, and like I said, ultimately making something available that maybe wasn't available before the innovation occurred. So I used the example when I was going through my doctoral program. In order for me to run my SPSS, first of all, I had to write my own syntax, but I also had to
SPSS. Explain SPSS to us.
It's a statistical package. So all my analysis was done with SPSS. So I had to go to the University of Buffalo, sit in front of a mainframe computer, which took up about a whole floor, and I had to sit there and type out my my program. Well, today, students have access to it on their phone, and they don't have to type out syntax. So there's an example of taking technology that wasn't available to everybody and now is available to pretty much anybody in the world. So that to me is an example of innovation.
And maybe we can dive a little bit more into that. So you've led clinics, you've led innovation centers in your career. Can you talk about innovation and the role that it's played in those components?
Sure. So this goes two ways. The first path was we developed a center of clinical trials and medical device evaluation, and what we did within the school of nursing at University of Rochester is we developed a center where we partnered with industry, and industry would come to us with ideas, prototypes, some type of innovation, and ask for help in developing that product. And it could just be feedback on a product, it could be actual product development, it could be data collection around the product. And so in the end, there was either a finished product or there was feedback on on a particular product, and that really at the time, that was in the late 90s, early 2000s. We were the only people doing that within nursing, at least that we could find, especially in a school nursing. So, and that led to development of several new products that eventually came to market. So that, and now I'm currently engaged with a center of excellence with infection control practices, where we're doing the same thing. We're having companies come in with ideas, innovations. We're helping them test it. We're helping them proof of concept. We're helping them with, how do you enter the U.S. market if they're a non-U.S. company. So I'm still in that space. The other piece of the innovation that's been within my career is looking at nursing practice and creating different models of practice, primarily around advanced practice, but it's also been with respect to shared governance and creating nursing systems, healthcare systems that are more efficient, more effective, and that too is innovation. So it's looking at your workforce and saying, how can we do things more efficiently, cheaper, or I should say more cost effective. And so we designed, Rochester was a leader in advanced practice nursing. And so we developed a model of that and then tested the model. And then we really challenged ourselves to think about providing care differently within an integrated delivery system. And we were talking about integrated delivery systems well before other areas of the country were doing it. So
can you give us an example of an integrated delivery system?
Sure. So it's looking, the traditional system the traditional healthcare system was you had the hospital, and then you had the pre-hospital, which was your primary care offices, and then you had post-hospital, which was home care, long-term care, rehabilitation. Those are all separate silos. Mm-hmm. So what systems did, or the smart systems did, was they said, okay, this needs to become more integrated. And this gets at that whole, the complexity piece of innovation. It's creating these networks within one system rather than have all your primary care docs and a different EMR and, they have different practices. Let's bring the primary care docs into our system. So you either purchase the practice or you develop a relationship, a referral base with them, incentives you can't really incentivize people to refer to you, but you set up that system so that the primary care docs are now part of your system. The same is true for post-hospital stay. So in Rochester, we went out and we started to buy primary care offices. So they were now part of our system. We then went out and we bought a home care agency. And we went out and we bought long-term care facilities. We bought rehab facilities. So now, instead of the silos, we have this integrated system. And there's some parts of the country that are still struggling with how do you create that integration and that network so that patients can't fall through the cracks. It's seamless. In Rochester, the whole city of Rochester is all on the same EMR, despite having two healthcare systems. So if I'm taking care of a patient at Rochester General Hospital, I can see their records from Strong. So it's just this developing of this network. In fact, when Clinton was running for president, he referred to Rochester's healthcare system as a model for the rest of the country. So what I did is I facilitated that by looking at the workforce and what's the appropriate workforce for that type of integrated delivery system. And primarily it was adding more nurse practitioners and physician assistants, but primarily nurse practitioners to the workforce.
So one really interesting point there that you made is that you have inter-system EHRs. So do you know how that's managed across the system, and do both organizations collaborate, or is there a body even above both of those that handle the EHR?
Well, they're both. First of all, both systems use the same EMR, which is helpful. And I'm pretty sure that was a deliberate decision to do that. and the system that was selected is really, in my opinion, best in class. They're the market share leader, and so I think there was a deliberate decision to do that. And as the university system purchased more hospitals, they converted to the EMR, and as the other system purchased hospitals, they converted to a similar EMR. But above that, there's a regional network that's not necessarily EMR based, but it's patient based. So patients are asked, can we share your information at this network above the EMR level, so that anybody that participates, it's called RIO, which is Rochester Area Health Network. And so you sign, patients sign that they'll join that, so that across the whole region, there is not in the granularity that the EMR has, but there's a database across the region that providers have access to.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for that great introduction, Dr. Ackerman. Again, this is Tim Raderstorff here with Dr. Mike Ackerman discussing his introduction into innovation and what that's done for him throughout his career. Thanks so much for your insights today.
Thanks, Tim.
Hi, everyone. Tim Raderstorff here, the Chief Innovation Officer at The Ohio State University College of Nursing, and have the privilege to be speaking to the director of our MHI program, Dr. Mike Ackerman, today. And we're going to be talking today about best practices in leadership. So, Dr. Ackerman, you've had leadership positions across health systems and academia. Talk to us about some of the best practices that you've seen.
Thanks, Tim. Glad to be with you today. So this is like an 8-hour talk, so I'll try to distill it down to 5 minutes. So, leadership has evolved. So let's start with the discussion about management versus leadership. And in my mind, they're not the same thing. You manage things, you lead people. So management is things like your budget, personnel, HR, finance, schedule. Leadership is leading people. So you could say, and we've seen an evolution of.
Actually, Dr. Ackerman, you got caught right there. So if you can go back to about 10 seconds to where you were, we had a little bit of lag.
Okay, so so I was talking about management versus leadership. Leadership is leading people. So it's the hard stuff versus the soft stuff. So the hard stuff is your budget, your schedule, your personnel, and things that have to get done. But the leadership is more of a relationship based part of that big picture. You need both. Not everybody has both. And I'm sure we've all worked for people that, great managers, but really not so much on the leadership side. So leadership's really evolved. And so we talk about, transactional leaders, and we talk about transformational leaders, but those definitions still reside in the industrial age. So it's still a very industrial age model of leadership. And in healthcare today, we need something different. So when I first started looking at the MHI program, my first thought was, well, this is probably just the natural evolution of leadership. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it is. It's different. Because transformational leadership, still the leader's at the center, and it's about building relationships. MHI, you're a system person, so it's moving the system forward through innovation. And it's not about the leader. It's about the end product. And that is greatly lacking today in healthcare. We've got a bunch of people that know finance. We got a bunch of people that know strategy and operations. But you get them all in a room and you say, here's our problem, how do we fix it? And it stalls. So And the other thing that happens is we take somebody that's really good at what they do. So for instance, Tim, you were a really good nurse, right? Really good evaluations. And one day I tap you on the shoulder and I say, hey, Tim, why don't you be the manager? And you're like, yeah, this is really great. Manager, you got a little swag, better hours, better pay. That's wrong. We know that, your hourly rate goes down as a manager. Your hours really are not that good. But then what happens is we after we tap you on the shoulder, we get you the sign, we say, good luck.
Right.
Without virtually not no development, but very little development. And that's not true everywhere, but it's certainly true in a lot of places. And I've seen it, myself included. So that development piece is so greatly lacking in healthcare. And it happens in medicine. Same thing. You take a brilliant surgeon and you say, hey, why don't you be the chair? And they say, yeah, I'd love to be the chair. It looks great on a resume. But they have no emotional intelligence. They have never had a leadership course. And then they say, well, we need to change the practice model. We're moving towards a, value-based approach. How can you reduce your costs but maintain your quality? And they're like, I don't know. Maybe I just do more cases. No, that's not what we're talking about. So the leadership development piece is so critical. And, I've had the opportunity to travel all over the world, and the places that do well have really effective leaders. And there are people that are nimble, they're risk takers, and they can take you from A, and your goal might be B, but they'll take you A to C and hope that you get the C, but B will be where we originally wanted to be. That's where innovation comes in. And very few people are equipped right now to do that kind of work. And because we're still kind of stuck in that industrial model of kind of top down. Now, I will say that there's a lot of places that do get this. And I spent a lot of my intellectual time studying the military leadership. And, the demands on the military leadership now, with the current climate out there, Al-Qaeda is such a sophisticated network that you got to let the people on the ground make decisions about what's going to happen here and now. And good healthcare systems do that well with the people that that are the worker bees. Effective leaders are servant leaders. They have to learn how to be servant leaders. And we got to kind of abandon the traditional model. And I'd even say, yeah, if you're transformational, that's good, but that's not enough anymore. Not in today's environment.
Yeah, so that's evoking a lot of emotion in me because I was that nurse. I was that nurse who was at the bedside for about a year and then got tapped on the shoulder and was ill-equipped to be the leader that I wanted to be. And things turned out okay, but there are a lot of lessons and a lot of skills that I wish I had had moving into that.
Oh yeah.
It also reminds me of as we take examples from industry, and this is a totally cliche one, but one that's top of mind for me because it was spoken at a faculty fellowship I just did this last weekend at MIT, and I was talking about the autonomy that's provided to Disney workers who work at the Disney World, and the gentleman was at Walt Disney with his family, and the group behind them was complaining about how terrible their hotel was. Now, they had purposely bought the cheapest hotel, and the conversation going back and forth as well. We should have spent more money, or we'll never do that again. And the waitress overheard and was part of this conversation. And at the end of the meal, she came back and said, "Listen, we're cleaning your room right now and moving you to the hotel down the street at no cost." So the waitress at the Disney World diner had the autonomy and the ability to reach out and say, "Listen, someone's not having the experience we want them to have. We need to go ahead and get them into a better situation here, so that we can secure these individuals as lifelong customers." And you think about the application of that to not just nursing, but our patient transporters, our physicians, how often do we actually provide our healthcare providers or team members with the autonomy to be able to make someone happier or healthier within our systems or organizations?
That's dead on. And that whole service recovery piece is huge. And when I was in Rochester, we actually started a service recovery program where, if a nurse at 2 a.m. got a phone call from a family member that was upset, they could give out meal vouchers, they could give out free parking. And I think about, that horrible thing that happened on United Airlines, where they yanked that guy off. And the CEO, Munoz, came on later and said, you know what? We should have given our employees the ability, $10,000 could have solved that problem. And you think $10,000? Well, the nightmare they had as a result of it, $10,000 is nothing. So he said, he lost his job afterwards, but he said, we did not empower our employees to solve that problem at the point of service. And good organizations do that well. But it's hard for the leadership to let that go. And it's all about trust and creating a more of a just culture where, so what, you make a mistake, you give somebody a free meal, a free room. But the people that know what's going on are the ones at the point of service. And I use this with industry too. A company will come to me and they'll say, hey, what do you think about this widget? And I said, well, have you asked the people that use the widget? No, but it's really good. I was like, you can design the best widget in the world, but if a nurse or a physician or a respiratory therapist doesn't think it's going to work, it's not going to work. They're not going to buy it. And we had that experience with Philips. The German engineers designed this bedside monitor. It's going to be out of the box ready. We rewired our ICU. I told the German engineers, I don't think it's ready. The font's too small, blah, blah, blah. In 24 hours, we took it down because they never spent the time to ask the people that use it. So, but anyways, that's kind of a long answer to that question. But it's a fun time, actually, because there's just so much happening in this area. And I think people are starting to recognize the current system just needs to be fixed.
Yeah, lots of opportunity, and couldn't be more time appropriate for people watching this to be engaged in our MHI program, and really should be pretty excited about the professional trajectory that their careers are going to be taking. The timing could not be more ripe for this type of leadership. So Tim Raderstorff here again with Dr. Mike Ackerman discussing best practices in leadership today. Thanks so much for your insights, Dr. Ackerman.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Tim Raderstorff here, and today I have the honor to be speaking with Dr. Mike Ackerman, the director of our MHI program, and we're going to shift our discussion today now to organizational culture. So, Dr. Ackerman, can you talk about the lack of effective leadership in culture and how that impacts organizations?
Oh, I'd love to, Tim. Thank you for the opportunity. So, when I first started out in this area, looking at organizational culture and good culture, bad culture, what makes up the culture, I used to define culture as it's the behaviors that make up the behaviors of the employees that are acted out based on the values and the principles of the organization. And then I started to read a guy by the name of Schein, Edgar Schein. I think it's Edwin Schein, S-C-H-E-I-N, and who's really the grandfather of organizational culture. And he talks about at the heart of culture are assumptions. So there's assumptions about the organization that exist that really give you insight into the culture itself. And he says that the behaviors are the artifacts of the assumptions. So for instance, if I'm asked to come in and do an evaluation of a culture, one of the first things I'll do is I'll go to a staff meeting. And I sit down at the staff meeting and I listen and I watch, and the person running the meeting says, okay, anybody got anything to add? And there's silence. Well, that behavior is an artifact of the assumption that I don't dare speak up, because the last person that spoke up either got their head ripped off, or it was Black Slip Friday and they weren't working there after the weekend. So the assumptions are crucial, and influencing those assumptions are crucial to organizational culture. So if you notice certain behaviors that support a particular assumption, you have to dig into that. Now, some of them could be very positive. For instance, if you walk into a hospital and everybody says good morning, and people hold the elevator for you, and when you get on an elevator or you're about to get on an elevator and there's a group of employees and there's some family members, they let the family members go first. Those are behaviors that support a particular assumption that, we really are patient-centric. We're a friendly place. Thank you for coming. It's the same as Marriott. You walk into a Marriott, how do they act? So then the leaders will ask me, well, how do I change the culture? And I said, you change the culture by changing the assumptions. And you change the assumptions by developing a different set of behaviors to support a new assumption. So if you're given feedback as a leader that, your turnaround, or you never give any feedback, or, we give stuff to you, but we never hear back from you. If that's the assumption, people will stop asking, because they know it goes into the abyss. I never hear back. So if you want to change that assumption, you got to change your behavior, and you got to focus on getting back to people. And, we're all busy, and sometimes it's tough to get back to people. But I learned this lesson. My CNO when I was in Rochester, Pat Witzel, was a wonderful CNO, big magnet hospital. And she gave me some feedback one day that, some of your peers say you don't always get back to them timely. And I said, well, gee, I get 100, 150 emails a day. How can I? And I get this many texts. And she says, it doesn't have to be an explanation. It's, got it, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Or give me a day to work on that. You don't have to answer the question. You don't have to, but get back to people so that they at least know. So there's an example of supporting a new set of assumptions. So by reading Shine, it really made me look at things quite differently, where I looked at behaviors, but I looked at the assumptions, because you change the assumptions. And if you change the assumptions by changing the behaviors, you promote a more healthy culture. The other thing I look at is the ability to speak up in a culture. And so I'm a crucial conversations trainer, and I've trained I don't know how many people. And one of the things we really focus on is feedback, and how do you give feedback? And because we don't do it well. Healthy cultures, healthy organizational cultures, feedback runs rampant. And there was a study that came out that looked at highly effective leaders, and the top 25% of people that were rated as highly effective leaders welcomed feedback. They wanted feedback. Tell me what I do well. Tell me what I don't do well. But on the same hand, they were also people that gave the best feedback. So creating that culture where it's okay to give feedback. So I spent a lot of time with, when I was the senior director, working with my team on feedback. And we've got several different techniques. But in order, and Lencioni, in his book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, one of those 5 things is healthy conflict. You have to be able to talk things out. So organizational cultures that allow you to talk things through, that don't get defensive, that it's safe to speak up, are those cultures that I think are the healthiest and promote the best outcomes. Mm-hmm. And but it's hard. It's really hard.
It's hard, yeah. So one of the first things that this brings to mind with me, I've had some roles in quality and have an invention that's based on quality metrics. And thinking back to where the foundation of that came from me, it was actually when I was getting my master's degree at Xavier. That for a conference we had there, we brought in John Nance, who wrote the book Why Hospitals Should Fly. I'm not sure if any of you have read it, but John has a lot of videos online. We can put some of that in the show notes here. But he tells a great story of having a first time. I'm not familiar with all the military terms, but having a first time colleague in the cockpit with him, someone straight out of training, and you know, in the terms of the hierarchy of military, someone who traditionally wouldn't speak up or have the opportunity to talk during a flight. And he goes through this process, and it's a great video. I won't be able to do it justice, but essentially, as they're taking off, he's getting his bearings and saying, okay, we're going to move to 17,000 feet. And he's talking, and they're having a good time in the cockpit, and he looks back and sees that this kid's pretty nervous and says, what's going on? He said, well, sir, I'm pretty sure that I heard air traffic control says that we our ceiling was 17 or 15,000 feet. And he looked back and said, are you sure? And he said, absolutely. And he immediately adjusted the plane. And as he adjusts the plane, he's able to see another plane coming over the top of them at the 17,000 foot ceiling. So seconds away from a mid-air catastrophe of his own air, saved by a person who felt comfortable.
Yeah.
Saying, I think we're doing the wrong thing here. So he uses that as a metaphor of the opportunity to speak up within health systems. But pretty powerful story. And, as we look to be leaders of innovation across systems, we need to be able to empower everyone on our team to impact the outcomes of others.
Yeah, and it's so critical. And as organizations move to culture of safety, where it's all about the patient, and it's all about patient safety. So, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the last discussion you want to have with a patient family member is, if we would have communicated a little bit better, this probably wouldn't have happened. Or if somebody would have spoke up. There are places that do it really well, but there's also places that struggle. And I probably get 1 to 2 calls a month from places that want to help with this. Mm-hmm. That how do you do this? But it starts at the top,
right?
And that's where I think the innovation leader can help with this and role model some of these behaviors. And because when you're in the middle of this, it gets a lot of these things that people are going to work on, they're high stakes things, and there's a lot at risk. So if like hitting another plane, there's a lot of risk there. There's lives at risk, and the same is true for us. So that's a great story.
So Tim Radersdorf here is talking with Dr. Mike Ackerman about culture and how that impacts leadership in the MHI program. Hope you're all finding some great nuggets here to take with you as you look to lead a health system or a startup or a large healthcare organization. A lot of these points are directly applicable across all systems. So thanks so much for your time today, Dr. Ackerman.
Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we got 8 minutes to hit this last topic, so feel free to take it wherever you need to. But we'll do relationships across the network, volume to value shift. Okay.
Which one?
Which one would you prefer out of that?
Let's do volume to value.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Tim Radersdorf here, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Michael Ackerman, the director of our amazing MHI program. And today we're going to be focusing on the volume to value shift, which has been in play now for quite some time, but still it's something that we're going to be figuring out, I think, for years to come. So, Dr. Ackerman, give us a little bit of insight of what the volume to value shift is and how that's going to impact the way we as healthcare innovation leaders can utilize our knowledge base behind this.
Sure, Tim. Thanks a lot. Well, the traditional healthcare system has been driven by volume. So the more you did, the more you got paid. And although we talked about quality, there was really no incentive from a payment system to provide quality. So if you did 1,000 hearts a year, bypass surgeries, but your mortality rate was 5%, that's the way it is. You get paid for 1,000 cases. If your readmission rate was 25%, you change the DRG to a diagnosis with complication, and you got paid for the complication. So that's been the traditional model up until really recently, because we're still not totally value driven. We're getting there, but we're not totally there. And and if you you listen to the rhetoric in Washington, there's a lot of people that aren't satisfied with the current healthcare system. So we still got some ways to go, but the value-based purchasing was really conceptualized probably 10 or 15 years ago, where we moved from this, the more you do, the more you get paid. We're not worried about complications or outcomes necessarily with respect to payment, to, well, you got to give high quality care at the right cost with the fewest amount of complications. So value is quality over cost. So how do you give the highest quality at the lowest cost? So what goes into that formula, and in every hospital system now, if they're an Article 28 healthcare system, buys into this. This is the federal payer system. This is driven by CMS, but for the most part, the private insurers have followed suit. CMS is Center for Medicaid and Medicare system, and it's our federal payment system. So the government has said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to withhold a certain percentage of your Medicare reimbursement, and you will be able to earn back that withhold based on your quality. And over the course of the last 10 years, the quality metrics have changed. And the bar keeps getting set higher and higher and higher. So for instance, part of the value-based purchasing equation are certain process measures. So door-to-balloon time for STEMI, ST segment MI. There's outcome measures, mortality, pressure ulcers, bloodstream infections. Those are more process measures, but they're complication outcome measures. And patient experience. So now patient experience weighs in, and patient experience is, I think the last calculation I saw is upwards of 30% of that withhold. But as soon as everybody starts to achieve these metrics, they get dropped because everyone's achieving, and they add something else on. So the expectation is quality continues to get better and better and better. So if you meet your metrics, you earn back your withhold. So a lot of people thought in the beginning, oh, we get the CMS bonus. It's not a bonus. It's you're earning back the withhold. So let's say my hospital last year was $50 million in Medicare reimbursement, and the withhold's 2%. So 2% of $50 million, that's not an insignificant amount of money. So if you meet your metrics, you get that 2% back. If you don't, CMS withholds it. And where do you think it goes? It goes to the places that did meet their metrics. So it's not that CMS wants to get richer and richer, because that's not their business, but they're going to reward the places that do well. Also, fairly recently added into the equation were efficiency measures, which means, okay, yeah, you're getting good quality, but are you doing it at the cheapest, the least expensive amount, the quickest? Can you, if a patient stays in the hospital 5 days, do they really need to be in the hospital 5 days, or could they get out in 4 days, which makes you more efficient? It looks at resource utilization from a equipment perspective or supply perspective. So the efficiency piece is in there too. And also the complication piece is in there. So readmissions, all-cause readmission is a thing, and you don't get reimbursed for it. So the whole system has changed now to a value-driven system. We're not there yet, but it's now challenged healthcare systems to focus on safety and quality first, finance second. So when I was in Rochester, we were part of the University Health Consortium, which Ohio State is also, and I think there's 110 academic medical centers. And so the University Health Consortium benchmarks, all 110. And when I was in Rochester, we were about in the middle from a overall rating. And we looked at UCLA, and UCLA was at the bottom, and they moved almost like to the second or third from the top in a period of a year. And we invited their quality person to come and talk to us. And they said, the first thing I did when I got there is I looked at the board meetings. And the way any typical board meeting starts is you spend the first ridiculous amount of time going over ledgers, finance, stuff like that. And then at the end of the meeting, we got quality now. So let's try to squeeze them in the last 45 minutes. But quality should be the first agenda on any hospital meeting. The finance piece comes if the quality is there. So you're seeing this shift from the finance piece or fee for service to value or high quality care. But you're also seeing hospitals get in the business of what other things can the hospital add to improve that. Now hospitals are getting into more social service planning. So instead of going to, the social services office, hospitals are starting to provide those. So anything that impacts a patient's life. So hospitals used to be you come here because you're sick. Well, now hospitals are becoming, you come here and we manage all of your health, whether it's social services, whether it's elder care. And so the hospital system that we know today is going to be much different in 5 years. And that's where innovation comes in, is looking at where do we want to be in 5 years? And, do we need a big social services department where patients come to us? Because those social determinants of care are so important. But hospitals really kind of wipe their hands of it and say, well, let somebody else do that. Well, that's changing. And you're going to see hospitals get more in that business. Now, that poses a challenge to some of the social service agencies that I think feel a little bit threatened. But I think, we're now, we've gone from volume to value. Well, now we're going, I think, even more to full service places that also get at the social determinants of care, not just the physical aspects of their care. So it's a fun time, but it's a challenging time. And organizations have to be nimble. And if you're not nimble, it's really difficult to get anything done. But the challenge to that is our payers aren't nimble. And it's all driven by, we still got to get paid. So, we can have the best idea in the world, but if the payers push back and say, well, we're not sure we want to pay for that, So it's up to us as innovators and change agents to figure that out. And but that's what makes it fun.
So Tim Raderstorff today talking with Dr. Mike Ackerman on the volume to value shift. Again, another great opportunity for MHIers and as you go out into changing the healthcare world, another great opportunity for you to capitalize on here. So hope you're able to find some direct application to your current work and talk to us about how we can help you apply that to achieving your dreams and goals of the future in healthcare. Thanks so much for your time today, Dr. Ackerman.
Thanks, Tim.